All right, it looks like we are all set up for our next wonderful run. I'm going to hand it over now to Enchantress of Numbers for her run of Biomiracle Bokutte Upa.
All right, so as you can see from the title screen, this is Biomiracle Bokutte Upa. I'm Enchantress of Numbers, and behind me, my couch is...
I'm Author Blues.
I'm Skyvilles.
Calorelia.
And so we're just going to go ahead and get started. Time starts on character movement, which is like 4 seconds after I start, so I'll just hit start and count it down. 3, 2, 1, go. That wasn't a very good countdown.
Okay, so this is the normal mode of the game. The main differences between the normal mode and what Eon is going to be playing is there's less health that you start every single world with in this mode. In addition to that, every hit that she takes will deal a full heart of damage rather than just a half a heart of damage. And finally, if by some random happenstance she were to game over, she would actually resume from the beginning of the world rather than the beginning of the level. I don't think that we'll see that happen, but the main difference for speedrunning normal versus easy is that there's a lot of damage boosting that's no longer possible. There's a lot more health management that has to be taken care of. That's our first mid-boss down, and there's a boss at the end of every single level. Most of them are going to be the same pig boss over and over, but it's what separates them is sort of the distinction of how the room is laid out. They're all going to spit out enemies, and all of them are going to have to be returned in order to kill the boss.
Yeah, the pig boss is a lot like Birdo from SMB2.
Yeah, you'll see it over and over, and it's basically the same boss with small twists over and over. So the main element in this game that you'll see over and over is this magical rattle that's used to turn enemies into balloons that can be pushed around as weapons, or they can be used as platforms. So for this sort of side-scrolling, crawling through the cake level, and another one we'll see later, the platforming aspect of it doesn't apply, obviously, but using enemies as weapons does. And I guess you can sort of say that that borrows from Super Mario Bros. 2 similarly, in that enemies are both weapons to be used against other enemies and hazards to be avoided.
That level can be a bit scary. All of the pink mole guys that were wandering around, every time they take a step, they try to turn, but the direction they turn is random. So you really need to avoid them or be ready to rattle them at a moment's notice.
Yeah, it's pretty much the heaviest reset stage of the run.
So a lot of the extra health that you'll see her picking up throughout the game is carefully calculated which ones can be gotten without too much of a time loss. The extra hearts make a huge difference between the strats that you can use. So by the end of this world, she'll probably end up having 5 hearts, at least 4 of them, and those will help with strats against the final boss of every world, which happens to not always be the pig. This world, it will be the pig one last time, but in future worlds, it will be a different boss, sort of varying it up a little bit. And a lot of times those strats will depend pretty heavily on damage boosting through things. Just going for a little setup here for an early hit. The boss, even though it looks like it's flashing, it actually can take damage to start the fight off, and it makes a huge difference between for the setup for the fight. So
It was a really good first hit. That's not an easy one to make.
yeah, setting it up is a little bit complicated. These 2 chests, it's random which one has an extra life in it and which one ends the level, which is kind of fun for speedrunning the game because you never want the 1-up chest. You always want the extra life. So, or you always want the angels, the fairies that take you out. So.
One thing you will notice her doing throughout the run, she will always open, whenever possible, the chest from the right side because you don't finish the level until it carries you out the side. So obviously the sooner you can get to the side, the better.
So a lot of this stage is fairly carefully routed to try to make sure that enemies spawn at the perfect time. So the reason why the enemies are showing up at just the right times for her to make these big gaps are not just because the level happens to be laid out that way, but because from the very beginning of the level, the way that she spawned and despawned them was carefully done to make sure that all of the positions were best possible positions. So that platform right there flashes on and off based on how many seconds you've been in the level. And it turns out that it does not take into account pausing. So it would disappear at just the wrong time, but pausing skips the disappearing animation.
Now this next level coming up, the water stage, is probably one of the most mash-heavy levels I've ever seen in any video game.
Yeah, this one is pretty heavily affected by your ability to mash. Plugging in a turbo controller can save another 4 seconds, and on top of that, the task can save even more time on top of it. This is an exhausting level, especially since the run doesn't get particularly challenging until right after this stage. So for RTA attempts, you'll find yourself making it to this level quite often, mashing the hell out of it and beating it, and then the very next level dying and having to reset.
Yeah, it really wears out your arm. But it's going pretty well right now, and just to comment, you know, this run's going on super early in the morning or late at night, depending on your perspective. And I think it's no coincidence because anyone who has experience with young children knows the baby couldn't sleep through the night, so that's why we had to play now.
Your silly trivia for this level, this is one of 2 levels in the game that does horizontally wrap. It doesn't really matter because you don't need to in this one. The second one, it will very much matter, but this is one of 2 levels that does horizontally wrap.
Yeah, so that time was pretty good actually for beating this level with mashing. You can maybe do a few seconds faster, but like the difference between a TAS and a turbo controller versus what's actually humanly attainable is such a wide disparity. That was a really good time for a human.
Yeah, I'm not that great of a masher, but so someone who's a good masher could do a better job at that stage than me, but.
This jump right here that she's going to do is not intended. You're supposed to spawn another round of balloons, but that gap is just barely possible.
It is a terrifying jump to make.
Yeah. So one of the choices that Eon has made through this world is to save time by not going out of the way for some of the extra hearts, which makes this boss fight only more terrifying. There's a setup that she's working on right here to kill the boss before he gets over to the right-hand side. But if he gets loose from the side, he can really just sort of box you in.
That was a really, really good fight. That boss right there eats a ton of runs.
Yeah, it looks relatively straightforward. It's just a constant volley of enemies, but it's not easy to line those all up and not take damage at the same time, because as soon as you bump one of those enemies to be used as a weapon against the boss, it also is able to damage you as well. So you have to line it up to attack the boss without putting yourself in harm's way at the same time. Everyone's favorite mechanic, Ice, now enters the fray.
It's also, should be noted, the iframes in this game are very long, and that's both for you and the bosses. So that's another reason why it's really difficult to do that stage well.
As you just
Good.
As you saw in that first damage boost there, it's very Castlevania. When you take damage, you get flung backwards. So you can use that to your advantage, like the spike skip she did there. If you land on the skip, turn around right before you hit the spike, it will damage boost you towards the direction you want to be going.
So I wanted to mention something about what just happened there. This game has a mechanic that I think lovers of platformers will recognize and appreciate. This game actually does have false stun, which is a really neat mechanic for platformers, that if you fall far enough, you get stunned, and that's really frustrating. But one of the interesting things about this game is that that only affects you if you land on the ground, not on enemies. So she actually landed and hit an enemy with the rattle as she was falling to prevent herself from being affected by false stun.
One thing we will see with the false stuns or not in this level, it's not a matter of how far you've fallen, it is where did you take off versus where are you landing.
Yeah, there's no distinction between jumping off of a platform and walking off of a platform. It only cares where you last were standing on the ground. A lot of the routing for these levels is just knowing in advance where enemies are sort of going to fly in and using them as platforms at the right moment. Because right now the enemies are helpful tools for speeding up a level, but later they're going to be the only way to proceed through the level.
Why it is called that will become much more clear later on in the run.
So every world has sort of its own gimmick going on, and you probably have figured out some of those gimmicks already. The first world was all food that we were making our way through, so cake and candy. The second world was all vegetables, so we were climbing on, tomatoes and lettuce and things like that. This world is ice, so thank God it's almost over. And the next world is probably the coolest world in the game because its gimmick is sort of unusual platformer mechanics. Sort of something that can be appreciated, I think, by lovers of platformers and platforming speedruns.
Cool world. I see what you did there, Ross.
Yeah.
So here's your second horizontally wrapping level, and this time it does actually matter. Depending on your routing, you will be going back and forth over the sides of the screen.
So Eon actually has done a lot of work with this game. I think I was one of the earlier people to route this game, but she has come behind. Her and Cal have both put a lot of effort into finding new strats for the boss, and I think this one is one of the more interesting new ones. So
Missed the early hit.
yeah, that's a tough setup to get an early hit on this walrus fight. It's a tough fight on its own. He goes through these very long invulnerability periods, and making sure that he stays stunned long enough to get 5 hits on one cycle is already hard enough. Between Eon and Cal, they've come up with quite a lot of interesting ways of doing this fight and many of the other boss fights faster.
Yeah, for having missed that first fight, or the first hit on the early hit there, that was a really, really well executed fight.
Yeah, it's so easy for this fight to get away from you very quickly. That fight is one of those ones where as soon as you mess up a setup, you often will find 2 or 3 cycles you can go through. Yeah, so this is the world where we start getting into these sort of gimmicky mechanics. For those of you who are lovers of Super Mario Brothers games, you may be familiar with the concept of puzzle castles. In Super Mario Brothers, there are often castles where, depending on where you walk through the level, determines whether or not either the level lets you proceed or loops. This level is exactly like that in the sense that she is choosing a very specific route through the level, because if she takes any other route, it's just going to loop infinitely. And so the route that she's taking is the one that lets her make progress. So sometimes you look at it and you say, well, that looks like a more difficult path, or that looks like a slower path, but it's the path she has to choose in order to continue.
This level is a good example of this game bizarrely times things for you really well.
Yeah.
So you can see she's still running right, and the blue enemies that are coming in from the side, they just are amazingly not in the way. This game actually does time things for you really well as long as you are where the game expects you to be.
Yeah, it rewards you for having confidence. You know, it's so easy to see those enemies coming at you and say, I'll just slow down and wait for them to pass. But as soon as you do that, the timing is messed up. So.
And again, that'll come in big in, I think it's 6-1.
Yeah.
There'll be 4 of those in a row that, yeah, you'll see.
So this level's gimmick will be obvious from the start.
Yeah, I don't understand why the game is upside down for the entire thing, and then we get to one stage that's the correct direction.
I just wish they had sort of committed to it and put the HUD upside down on the top of the screen.
So one thing with this stage being upside down and all the spikes there, some of the damage boosts you are tempted to do, it will kill you very easily. So that there's basically 2 ways through this level. The first half you can either do top or bottom. Second half is fairly set.
Yeah, once you get to the second half of this level, it gets to a point where it stops giving you enemies to use for platforming and starts making the whole level spikes. I mean, at that point, you've sort of already committed, so there's no way to proceed. So you kind of already have to know a slightly unfair moment in this game is level design.
So that's one of the terrifying damage boosts. I have never managed to pull it off without plummeting to my doom.
Something about the whole level being just upside down that makes it slightly way more difficult than I think just being upside down has any right to be.
So that level was one method of upside down. The next level is going to be a different way to do things backwards.
Yeah, it's the only -3 level in the game to have the distinction of having the boss first and then you play the levels. So that's the gimmick here, is that bosses always come at the end of the levels, except for in this one where we're going to start with the boss and then we get to play the level. So little cute gimmicks, twists on the formula. happens to be sort of a repeat boss, but what makes him interesting is the boss room there lends itself very easily to him just shooting fire straight at you. So that stun lock that she pulled off was just preventing him from completely wrecking her.
Yeah, that was one thing we didn't see because she timed both the snake fights so well. The first one back in 1-2 can fire, like it spits fireballs at you, and that one's more of a flamethrower effect. And especially the first time, it can be really, really bad. So never seeing the snake fire, that's two really well executed fights.
So World 5, its gimmick is just office supplies, not the most well thought out gimmick, but unfortunately what it adds to it as well is a this conveyor belt mechanic, which can be intensely frustrating because the conveyor belt mechanic affects you anytime you're touching it from either side. So that doesn't just mean standing on top of it, but that also means touching it from the bottom. You're affected by it pretty heavily.
So there is a quick jump you can do there, but it is very easy to miss, and if you do miss it, you're in a world of hurt. So taking it safe there for a marathon setting, absolutely the right call.
Yeah, and there's no checkpoints in the game, so...
This is another, by the way, before you get to it, so I can set it up, this is another boss fight that was intensely frustrating in the speedrun, but Eon actually did a lot of work to learn sort of a new setup for doing this fight quickly. She missed the early hit for it that sets it up perfectly, but nonetheless, doing this fight on a conveyor belt is already just infuriating.
Yeah, and actually just earlier this week, Cal found a better setup than I was using previously to get the early hit on there, so...
That's the one you saw her try. Really, it's one of those, how did none of us think to try this before we did it? Because it's so much more easy to do and so obvious.
Yeah, this game, you might think that it's relatively unknown, but there have been some pretty notable people who've sort of participated in this game. So the three of us here, Enchantress of Numbers, Cal, and myself, have all run this game and done some routing for it. White Hat 94 has also done some work on both easy and normal mode and done some routing of his own. So a lot of people have taken a look at it. We've found some really clever stuff over the years. I've been running this game for probably about 3 years at this point, and in more recent history, a lot of new stuff has come up. This is another sort of new boss fight mechanic. This is a very frustrating boss fight to do the right way. You're supposed to fall down to the bottom and try to volley these shots back up, which is just the worst thing. But keeping up on top of the platform where the pig actually is incredibly challenging and incredibly fast.
There are a few ways you can do it. That the first early hit she got there when it was still fading, and that is an incredibly difficult shot. Between lining it up correctly and actually getting the hit to wrap around the corner so it bounces back, it's very difficult.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
One of the unnecessary difficulties of this level in particular, 5-3, is that the death plane is actually much higher than you think it is. I remember seeing a couple of boss runs end to that.
Yeah, this continuing in the trend of borrowing from Super Mario Brothers games, this water level here implements the same water mechanic you might remember from SMB1 with sort of this suction down, pulling down, and unfortunately, whereas with Super Mario Bros. 1, it's maybe not that big of a deal because you're already not really close to the bottom of the screen, or it's fairly forgiving. This one, the death plane is exceedingly high. So if she touches even a bit of the HUD at the bottom, the black space at the bottom of the screen, she's pretty much instantly dead. And that's really challenging.
Getting through that tunnel at the end with only taking one hit is also very difficult. You can usually expect to take two.
Getting 2 hits on a single cycle in this fight right here is...
It saves about 10 seconds total if you get both of them, because
Wow.
it skips a really long swimming animation.
Yeah, again,
That was incredibly fast.
Yes.
That is a really challenging fight to do well. If you don't get the double hits, the seahorse swims around, which is not just slow but dangerous because you get boxed into the corner of the room. So
getting one double on that boss is difficult. Getting both of them is very, very well done.
So this is sort of the dairy world. Everything's milk and cheese and
We're in Wisconsin.
basically. Unfortunately, they also decided to make most of the ground sticky or bouncy and remove the floor, so it's not pretty.
Here's the bell power-up again. So we see this twice, this level and the first level. It makes Upa invincible, runs much, much faster.
Yeah, jumps higher. It's really sad because when you first start to look at this game as a speedrun and you see that in the first stage, you think, wow, this is going to be a really cool speedrun, and then they never use that power-up ever.
So this is the section I mentioned earlier where the enemies perfectly line up for you as long as you do what the game wants you to do.
Upa looking through a cheese window.
So this is another example of sort of subverting the level design. You're supposed to have to stay at the bottom of the room and try to get a good bounce to hit the pig, but you know, this is one of those examples of using one of the enemies as a platform to just skip it and jump up there with him. Makes it a lot faster.
You can do it from either side. I usually do it from the right because it's safer, but it does cost you about 2 to 3 seconds.
Right. So this is another eating level. This one is a lot easier than the early one. The one earlier in the game has the notable issue of having a lot more enemies around that are more tightly packed together, and so you get hit a lot more often. This one, avoiding the enemies tends to be a little more straightforward. So,
Yeah, this is also a very nice stage.
it is nice.
It is a very nice stage.
Nice is the way I would describe this stage.
So the pink mice behave much like the moles did in 1-2. The green mice just beeline it for you. They will go wherever they need to go to get to you as fast as they can.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a nice stage.
Nice.
Nice.
I don't need to even be looking at chat right now to know what's going on there.
Nice.
And so this very nice stage is followed up with, I would say, the most difficult stage of the run.
Yes.
The worst thing. I think anyone who's ever quit speedrunning this game probably did it because of this level. This is a really frustrating level because in this level, all of the floor has been replaced with bouncy or sticky. They hurl enemies at you as quickly as possible. A lot of the jumps are basically you get one try at them or die. This is probably the worst level in the game, and we have another world to go after this, so the damage or the difficulty curve isn't exactly right, probably.
Yeah, and this also has the worst boss fight of the game.
Unquestionably, that is not even debatable, and again, you'll see why. So again, this is the game rewarding you for doing what it expects you to do. Once you drop off and start bouncing there, as long as you just keep moving right, you will line up basically perfectly.
So this floor that EnchantressOfNumbers is on right now, she doesn't have a choice but to keep bouncing if she's standing on it. And now she has to do these same precise hits and bounces and return volleys while being forced to continue jumping.
That was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the strap.
Yeah, that initial triple that she got is ridiculously difficult between timing when you're falling down, timing the bounce, hitting enemies in midair, go left.
Thank you.
Go left.
Go left.
I always forget to hold left because I don't have my splits. But yeah, that boss, if you don't get that set up perfect, it goes pear-shaped super fast.
So this is the long fall stage. This is notably actually the only level in the game where they turned off the fall stun mechanic. No matter how far she falls, she will not get fall stun, even if she lands on the ground properly. That said, this is just a huge memorization stage, just remembering where all of the spikes are and the doors are and the gaps are. Nice. A lot of the boss rooms do allow horizontal wrapping, though it rarely matters. The boss can't be pushed off screen in that way, and it typically doesn't benefit you to actually move that way. It's just sometimes you can hit an enemy off screen and it returns on the other side.
So here we have a new enemy, the black bombs. If you get too close in their line of sight, they will explode and launch projectiles at you, and those can cause problems. They can also assist you.
A lot of the movement in this stage is fastest by virtue of either damage boosting through things or by just avoiding the black bombs entirely, just so that they don't blow up and interrupt things.
Surely that goat picture doesn't have any foreshadowing.
No.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So say goodbye to our good pig friend. That's the last pig friend we're going to see for the rest of the game. And here we're entering into 7-3, which is the longest stage in the game. It's also notably the last stage in the game. 2 boss fights in a row at the end of it.
So there's going to be a whole lot of damage boosting here.
She can afford to do a lot of this damage boosting because this world actually, or this stage actually provides a few full heart containers, which are going to give her the opportunity not just to finally get to 5 hearts.
Beeb.
Not just get to 5 hearts, but also get health refills at strategic moments.
So again, there's damage boost from the projectiles, and you can run through that one. Here's the fall damage.
She's waiting for the platform anyway.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if you take it there.
Yeah.
And it's not fall damage, it's fall stun.
Yeah. Yeah, this level was the introduction of the infamous Beeb. All the blocks always end up spelling that out. What it means, I'll never know. I assume Konami will take that to their grave. It's like they're trying to communicate with us.
So these golden elephants, if you do happen to drop into the middle of the level, they can cause a whole lot of problems because, again, like the green mice, they will hunt you down.
Messed up the swag boost, so it costs a couple seconds to miss it. It saves almost no time, but I figured we had to go for swag.
Yeah. So
Here's our final
good friend Snake Boss.
Yeah, our Snake Boss friend one more time. Fortunately, we'll be able to stun him, and our health isn't really a situation because it'll refill right after this fight.
All right, final boss fight.
By the way, we didn't talk about the story, but this is the guy that turned everyone in the world into monsters. We're the only one who survived. We're a biological miracle. Do you think that's where the name came from?
Oh, you know, possibly.
Ooh.
All right, and time is when the screen fades to black, so. And time.
Wow.
And
That's a really great time.
That's more than just a really, really great time.
that is the fastest recorded time, so that would be
is a
a world
recorded
record.
world record.
Yeah.
So, thanks to you, Upa, everyone has started to enjoy living there again. So now we know where this game takes place. It takes place there.
Well, it's certainly not here.
Yeah, so thank you all for having me and watching, and stay tuned for all the great runs coming up.
Congratulations to Enchantress of Numbers on that fantastic world record run. Isn't that exciting to see a world record here at SGDQ? We have a lot of donations in support of this run. We have a $25 donation here from MPod. Good luck, Enchantress of Numbers. It's awesome to see Baby Game on the GDQ stage. I hope you have a heckless run. Well, it was more than just that, as we just saw. We have a $100 donation from Chez Fromage. Hey, it's Aeon, one of my best friends since, well, forever. Dad Fromage and I are somehow still up and sending good baby vibes. If only it were Pyramid. We have a $20 donation from, I apologize if I butchered your name, Frakaski. Hey, Enchantress, absolutely love your socks. Good luck on your run. Heart. We have a $25 donation from Cetic Astronomy. I had to laugh at that baby comment as I'm watching this morning with my 9-month-old daughter in my arms. Shake that magic rattle. We have a $250 donation from Meg Mac Attack 78. Go Aeon and hi Upa. Beeb. Good luck and have fun. Let's see if that meme continues on. I saw you Twitch chat. You kept yelling that out. Let's keep that hype up. We have a $20 donation from Wig the Dog 181. Hey GDQ and Eon, I'm glad my lack of a functional sleep schedule has given me a chance to see the Supreme Games block. Good luck on Baby GM. Well, Enchantress of Numbers was able to do that run fantastic, so I think she used that luck really well. We have a $10 donation from Out of How Many saying, it's way past that baby's bedtime. Well, don't worry, that baby is going to go and take a wonderful nap. We have a $10 donation from Valaquest. Nice! Much love, Runner's Choice. All right, we have some more donations here while we set up for our next fantastic game. It's going to be another short but sweet run in this silly games block that I hope you are thoroughly enjoying this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. We have a $10 donation from Prio1165. Glad to wake up in the middle of the night because that's when some of the most interesting games are played at GDQ. Money goes to bringing Luigi to the party in Paper Mario. Since you brought it up, let's give you a little clue here on how that donation incentive is going. I don't think you have anything to worry about because the bid war between Bring Luigi and Ditch Luigi is about $5,000 apart. While that may not seem like a lot for some bid wars, when the lead is just over $5,000, that is a considerable amount. However, a lot can change until the run, so keep getting your donations in to support your choice in that bid war. We have a $150 donation from Morak. Greetings from Finland. Had to get a donation in during this awesome yet silly block. Good luck to all the runners and keep up the good work. We have a $151 donation from, I will say this a lot and I apologize for that too, but I apologize if I butcher your name, Yugi. Unfortunately, I am unable to watch the event live due to work, but no way am I not donating to the best event of the year. We're glad you hold us so highly in your opinion. I too think this is the best event of the year, and I'm sure all of our runners and people watching here live and on stream think so too. We're doing this here for a great cause, and we're having a lot of fun doing so. I know I am, and I think everyone else is as well. We're still getting set up for our next run, but I would like to remind you, if you haven't been keeping an eye on the tracker of all of our incentives, we did have an incentive for our next run. That incentive did get met, so you are, in addition to seeing this wonderful, exciting run of Yo Noid 2, you're also going to be seeing an FMV intro that you all donated for, so I hope you're all super excited to see that extra little bit of the game. With this short run coming up, I'm sure it'll give us a lot more to enjoy watching. While we're getting everything set up for the next run, I'd like to remind you of another one of our fantastic sponsors during this great event. Devolver Digital are purveyors of fine digital entertainment from independent artists worldwide. Visit devolverdonequick.com for the limited time Devolver Done Quick bundle on Steam that includes Enter the Gungeon, Titan Souls, High Hell, Shadow Warrior, Classic Redux, and Minute. We've been running some of those games here in the marathon, so this will be your fantastic chance to get in on some of that fun action.